I'm so excited. I am so excited to welcome our first speaker. An amazing woman of extraordinary wisdom, a woman of incredible stand for leadership for women. I just personally love this woman, love her power, her authenticity. And so I'm so excited to introduce you to Jennifer Oliver Brown. Let's give her a huge round of applause.
Jennifer.
All right. Go, Jen.
We're going to make sure everybody's muted. And then Jennifer, whenever you are ready, we are ready for you.
Our stories change humanity. They change narratives, transform mindsets. They break silence and shame. Stories set people free and in some cases call others to account. Most importantly, when our stories are told, they set other testimonies into motion, offering permission and invitation. So let me tell you a story about Tarana Burke, activist, advocate, and author. In 2006, Tarana worked tirelessly supporting the needs of young women of color. As a mentor at a youth camp, she would often say to the girls, if you need anything, you can come to me. If you need to talk, I'm here. So one day she was approached by a girl named Heaven, who haltingly divulged her terrifying story of repeated sexual abuse. Surprisingly, Tarana felt overwhelmed and completely impotent to provide the love and support this girl needed in that moment. So much so that she stopped her mid-testimony and said, I think there's another counselor who might be able to help you better. As that girl walked away, stuffing her story back inside, Tarana felt the source of her impotence. It was the shame of her own inner voice saying, me too. You see, Tarana herself was raped when she was 7 years old, and that piece of her history remained bound within her, untold. This drove Tarana to create the Me Too organization in 2006, a means of support for survivors of sexual violence, so that when somebody courageously gave voice to the unthinkable, she and her team could meet them there in their need. Indeed, stories break silence and shame. Now, fast forward to 2017. In response to accusations made against Harvey Weinstein, actors began to share publicly their own invisible stories of sexual abuse, adopting the simple hashtag #MeToo. It went viral, prompting millions of people worldwide to out their own accounts of sexual abuse, along with many of its perpetrators. Indeed, stories call others to account. And yes, they do set other testimonies into motion. What if Heaven never entrusted her pain with Tarana? What if Tarana refused to give voice to her own lived experience as that 7-year-old girl? It is impossible to estimate the catalytic power that one story holds. That's why we must give voice to our stories as a means of changing humanity, because I believe every human being wants to be seen, heard, known, and valued. Our stories make that possible. They provide the connection we all crave. If you think about it, it's a primal human desire, a quality that separates us from all other living things. We all have a tale to tell. Let me tell you one of mine. This life, this person you see before you, is made up of 3 essential parts: a strong physical body, a mind that reasons, and a soul that loves. But for most of my life, my mind ran a totalitarian regime. My soul and body were ignored until one day they came to my rescue in May of 21 when I nearly drowned in the waters of Maui. I remember the feeling of panic and not being able to breathe. the urge to signal for help, and the recognition that there was no time. God, help me. My soul cried repeatedly as my body struggled to get us closer to shore. My arms and legs grabbed at the coral, and my soul, where God lives, showed up unyielding. These two, my body and soul, carried me to safety, proving themselves reliable, trustworthy, indispensable. My mind, in all of its logic and intellect, could not save me that morning. In the days after this incident, I became acutely aware that my grasping for air was a metaphor. I had no room to breathe in this so-called fulfilling life that I'd created. Truly, my mind had convinced me that fulfilling meant a calendar full and filled with relationships, meaningful work, perfect parenting, and an ever-increasing to-do list demanding completion. She meant well, my mind, but she also dominated the conversation. My soul would try to speak up, expressing its yearning for a partner, someone to navigate life's dance with. And then my mind would take over, creating a hasty action plan for obtaining a husband and marriage that check all of the socially approved boxes. Then my body would issue visceral red flag warnings, and my mind would dismiss them with new commands: disregard and numb, sending me back to the reliable patterns that I clung to. I was suffocating. And this experience in May reminded me that there is an exquisite check and balance to who we are. Ideally, our body, mind, and soul work in concert to create that fulfilling existence. No longer would I allow one aspect of me to bully the other two into quiet submission. Indeed, our stories change narratives and transform mindsets, sometimes even our own. As I think of my own lived experience and that of Tarana Burke, the pain, the joy, the learning, the inner knowing that our stories reveal, I find myself asking, what gets in the way? What keeps our real stories cloaked in silence? And two things come to mind. First, is it possible that many of us have become purveyors and consumers of manufactured storylines? Let me explain what I mean. We live in a culture where the art and honesty of a truly relational exchange is frequently replaced with that perfectly curated story. You know, the one we add to our social media profiles, edited, polished, maybe even embellished. And then we are validated for that rendition of our lives. We accept the counterfeit of rapid fire likes, a flurry of hearts across our screen, all derived from the flippant click of a button. We drink in flattering responses to something that may not have been all that authentic in the first place. How can that do anything but insidiously chip away at the true acceptance that we crave? I see a second subtle barrier to sharing ourselves and changing humanity. I believe it's natural to feel guarded, and anything revelatory feels raw, edgy. So many fear that the vulnerability of sharing their story just might destroy them. Tarana Burke did not speak of the abuse perpetrated against her for 40 years. She, like many, had reasons for leaving that story unopened. But here's the thing. I believe we all languish when stories remain hidden or bridled. An honest admission actually benefits both the storyteller and the listener. As the speaker or storyteller, we undergo the catharsis of divulging something once buried, unearthing our inner world, and then we get that satisfying feeling of being acknowledged. And in my case, speaking about my experience allowed me to actually recognize parts of myself that had been muted. And then to realize that another woman resonated and found herself in my story, gift beyond measure. And now what about the benefits for the listener? We gain an opportunity to understand others more deeply when we listen to their stories, creating compassion, empathy, an expanded paradigm, a wellspring of wisdom. Story forges a bond between hearts and minds. So the solution I want to offer is this. If it is indeed the case that we all want to be seen, heard, known, and valued, and that we all have stories to tell, then let's become proficient at sharing our lived experience and listening deeply to others. This can change the world. And that may be an audacious claim, but I am making it. Envision with me a child, a marriage, neighborhood, our schools, companies, heads of state. How would the world look different if all of those people felt authentically seen and valued? How would they show up in those spaces? What if we all got more comfortable telling our stories and giving thoughtful attention to those around us? I believe we can all attest to the fallout that occurs when people feel invisible, silenced, or marginalized. Things can get ugly. Picture the teenage girl who eviscerates herself, offering her body in pieces to a boy because she just wants to be known and valued. Imagine the middle-aged man who takes a gun into public and shoots to kill. He wants to make a statement and finally feel heard. Call to mind the power structures who silence mouths to foster greater oppression. We all of us hold the power to change these things. So allow me to leave you with this. Humanity is an anthology, a collection of stories. I invite you to find your place in the storybook of humanity. And that starts with noticing, owning, and perhaps even whispering your truth. And it's being emboldened to listen carefully to others, acknowledging their equal place in the anthology. What story lives inside you, untold? How will you express it? Is it through a quiet conversation with a friend or even a stranger? Is it through a microphone? Is it through written word or maybe artistic outlet? How will your story change humanity? Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. That was gorgeous.
Good.
So inspiring.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Excellent.
Wow.
Make sure I'm unmuted. Okay, I would love to open up. First of all, I would love to open up for someone here to celebrate, to share. What did you love about what Jennifer said? What touched you? What moved you? What inspired you? What made you think? I would love to have someone lean in and give her a celebration. Let's be generous with our celebrations. Just pop in. You can unmute yourself and start talking.
Wow, Jen, Shane, yeah. Loved what you just pulled together. It so resonated with me. I loved the two quote, the stories in the beginning and bringing that to the voice and just how you brought that so beautifully together and made me think that if we all had the power of just sharing our voice and what's within us, what changes can we make in the world? So thank you. Thank you very much. Mwah.